I appreciate the invite to come back and talk about a passion of mine, animals. And it's such a passion that I most everybody has, right? Everybody loves all things furry and finned and maybe scaly. I don't know. Reptiles. I'm not sure. Some may not, right? Get carrying a little there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. I got a little presentation that I'm going to share with y'all, and I think some of you know who that is, and that is my man. That's Ernie. Can you guys see my screen? Can you see the PowerPoint? Okay,
Ye-
perfect. All right. So today we're going to talk about life, death, and beyond, and how we walk each other home, and specifically that's the how we're walking home with our animal companions. And a little bit about my story for those of you who don't know. This is my dog Ernie. He was what I like to call my heart dog. While we often have many, many, many animals in our lives, there might be one or two that just really like tug you in a certain way, bring you lessons, bring you knowings, and radically change your life. That was my dog Ernie. So Ernie was diagnosed with lymphoma in 2012, and it pretty much crashed my world, right? It was when I got the news on the phone, I remember having to leave work because I couldn't even breathe. She told the news, and I went, literally lost my breath and had to leave to try and wrap my head around what was happening with my dog Ernie. And so I did wrap my head around it, and we started this journey together. And we continued to spend time together doing things and just trying to be present to the moment while I was dealing with some massive anticipatory grief. It wasn't just Ernie that was in my life, it was also my little dog, Charlotte. And Charlotte came into my life, it was about 2008 ish. So she was with Ernie and I for about 5 or 6 years, and they were pals. They were great buds. She was about 5 pounds and he was 70, but they were like the Mutt and Jeff, and we went everywhere together. And, that was very important to me is that we continued on being present and carrying on as if through his journey. This picture right here, excuse me, is with Charlotte's ears getting ready to fly away. This was the weekend that I had found out, and I'd already had a trip planned up to the Painted Desert. So we went ahead, and a friend came in, and we took that trip together. And I'm so glad that I did. And there's just some really great memories about spending time with him. And I think that's one of the things that I've really learned from going through a lot of this is that to learn how to be present to the present despite a lot of the tough emotions that we're going through that we really can't ignore. And if we don't ignore and we can embrace, we can find that balance. But we'll talk about that more. So this was also that weekend that I was up at the Painted Desert, and a friend of mine in Michigan had come here to travel. He often will come here to travel with me, and we were up in northern Arizona, and I had brought my gongs and my bowls, and so I thought, what a perfect time to share sound and vibration with my dog Ernie. So that's what we did up in Pine, and it was just beautiful. So I have to add in here because it is part of my story. For those of you who don't know, and for those of you who do, it'll be a beautiful reminder. Ernie loved tennis balls, loved his tennis balls. And after he was diagnosed with lymphoma, he got lots of them. So for Christmas, he got them. For Tuesdays, he got them. For Saturday afternoon, why not? He would get them. And so I filled his life with these tennis balls that he loved so much, and it was just one of his favorite things. He loved to chase his tennis balls. Tennis balls, tennis balls, tennis balls. So this is really important because towards the end of his life, we had a conversation, and I asked him, I said, Ernie, after you die, will you send me a sign? And I would love for that sign to be tennis balls. He also loved to chase sticks, but I thought, if I say sticks, every stick that I, how can I determine, with all the sticks that lay on the ground that I see would be from him? I said, let them be tennis balls and make it so that I cannot second guess what is happening, right? That it is from you, so that I don't have to second guess that it's from you. And so I crossed my fingers so that that would be what he would share with me. So it came towards the end, and we said our goodbyes. And Ernie died at home, very, very peacefully in my living room. Um, and he just kind of drifted away. And in my mind, I had heard, I'm free, I'm free, I'm finally free. I'm in the land where all that matters is love. And I was like, what? Where did that come from? And it was just incredible because it was so clear and so fast, and it was just there and gone. And I felt this incredible, overwhelming sense of beauty and peace and lightness and love. And it was just amazing. And I have learned since then that when I lose someone and when someone dies, to fall into that and really embrace that feeling, because for me, at least soon after, then the grief starts to set in, kind of pushes that feeling away a bit. So now I need to process those other emotions. So there is this beautiful feeling that I have felt with all of the deaths that I've been around right after, is this sense of unexplained enormous love and peace. It's just this peace. It's this light. It's like I could float. I could literally float. That's the feeling that I've gotten, and I got it with Ernie. So he died, and I love this beautiful Rumi quote: "Beyond our ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there's a field, and I will meet you there. When the soul lies down in the grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, and even the phrase each other doesn't make sense." A beautiful space to be, to join with our loved ones in the light. So after he died and he's in my living room, I invited my two friends over that lived in the neighborhood. Come on over, let's just have a chat. Ernie's gone, and I just would love for you to be part of this. And Ernie had an altar on the floor where we had been holding vigil. And we were sitting there talking, and all of a sudden a tennis ball came rolling across the floor, across the carpet. And I'm like, wait, what? What is happening here? And I asked my friend, wait, what is happening? Or did you do that? Did Charlotte do that? Charlotte, the little dog? She says, no, Charlotte's on my lap. And I'm like, what is happening? And while I'm saying that, another tennis ball came rolling across the floor. So what struck me years later that was even more magnificent about this is that I had asked Ernie, I don't want to second guess it. He sent two tennis balls in front of two witnesses. And I was just like, how does that even happen? But I have faith that that was him, that that was Ernie sharing this wonderful message with me. And it forever changed my life. So as we know, when we lose our dogs, and this is what we kind of hope heaven looks like, and what kind of the image what Ernie sent, it was just a beautiful place of love. Dogs all over, of course, cats all over too, and birds and turtles and fishes and all things wonderful. I love this little, if this is a dog NDE, of course, he didn't really notice Jesus and what he looked like, but he did see he was holding a sandwich. So the dog recognized the sandwich during his brief 10 minutes in heaven. So this is an ND or an afterlife talk, a near-death experience talk by a dog. I just thought that was funny. I tossed that in there. But we know that that life goes on, right? And we know that our animals can come to us in our dreams, and that we can see them out of the corners of our eyes. We can sense them, that they haven't really left us, that their spirits are everywhere, right? We talk about this all the time, especially in these groups, that there's no death. It's just a change of worlds. However, we still grieve. We still grieve. And it's not just a dog. It's not just a cat. It's not just our bird. What's the most difficult thing about owning a dog? The goodbye. Sorry. Touched me there for a moment. So we grieve. And that's okay. That's acceptable. Angie Cartwright had said, "It saddens her that we live in this world where grievers have to defend their right to grieve." I remember when Ernie died, well, how old was he? I'm like 15. Oh, well, what a great life. And what did he die of? It's cancer. Oh, well, then he's free of pain. It's like, I understand all of that, but I'm grieving right now. And I'd love for you just to be in a space of holding space and non judgment as I mourn. So that's what we did. We mourned, not just myself, but Charlotte. Charlotte would lay by Ernie's toys. She would sleep by his altar. She missed him just as much as I did. But then time did move on. We began to heal. Do you 100%? Does time heal all wounds? Absolutely not. Does time soften the pain? I believe that. And I love this Gahil Gibran. We look into our hearts and we start to remember with delight and love those memories that sometimes were too painful, the pictures that were too painful to look at, we can now look at and we can see and we can be delighted by them. So fast forward, this is 2015. This is 2 years after Ernie died. This was just about 3 or 4 days after the anniversary of his second death, and I'm in Florida just hanging out on a beach by myself with Charlotte. So not really by myself, I was with Charlotte. And we're hanging out on the beach, and I'm watching this woman out on the water with this little dog. And they're just swimming and they're having a ball, and I'm just watching and we're just relaxing. And this dog, Ginger, comes up onto shore. And then Ginger came by me with a yellow ball in its mouth. And the dog came and ran all the way around my chair, all the way around again. It dropped the ball and then left. And I'm like, wait, that's weird. Now, I know dogs and tennis balls, and they don't normally gift them to you. I got to tell you. Okay. Their ball is their ball. So this dog drops this yellow tennis ball and then goes on its merry way with its people. And I'm like, huh, that's weird. And I went, oh my God, a yellow tennis ball 3 days after Ernie's anniversary. And I got up and I chased after these women. And I'm like, you're never going to believe this. And I shared the story of Ernie and the tennis balls and Ginger, who somehow got a hold of a tennis ball and felt, I didn't call this dog over. This dog just ran over to me, spun around in 2 circles, dropped the ball, and left. And it was just like so delightful that this happened. And again, that's the sign that I asked from Ernie to send to me, was tennis balls. And there you go. That's the tennis ball that Ginger left on the beach that day. So it was pretty miraculous. So soon came the time for Charlotte to say goodbye. And so I called her my tiny dancer, and it was her time. And from Ernie, I had learned more about palliative care and hospice and comfort. And even though your animal may be terminal and at their end of life, there are things you can do to help them. So we really relied a lot on acupuncture or acupressure. And this is beautiful integrative vet who is giving Charlotte a vitamin B shot on an acupressure point to support her at that time. Oh, and then signs came. So during this time, this was the time that Charlotte was really towards the end, and I was doing whatever I could to make sure she was comfortable and calm, and I was prepared for that. And so what I did was I created also a vigil. Now, my mom had just died 2 months earlier. She had died in September. I guess it was 3 months because this is January. So my mom had just died, and I was still mourning my mother. And so Charlotte is dying, and I created this vigil. So up on the corner of my room, I created this place with my mom's picture and some rosaries and these types of things. And that was where we just said prayers, and we were just holding space for Charlotte while she was going through the dying process. And so one night we're laying there, And I got the idea that I needed to take pictures. I'm like, I just got to take pictures. I need to take pictures. So I start taking these pictures. And I look at the pictures, and at first I see there's this like streak of a light. And I'm like, okay. And then I look at the next one, I'm like, wait, that is like even more of a light. And then in the third one, I'm like, whoa, that's a big light. And so I don't know who or what it was, but this was right above where this vigil was, where I was praying and talking to my mom about, needing some support. And it's interesting because it's by the butterfly. And my mom, before she died, I asked her what her sign would be, and she said a butterfly. So, so that was the signs that we got, and Charlotte died a day later. But I felt some comfort from knowing that people were with us. Now, the other thing I'm really like connected to are numbers and following numbers, patterns of numbers, and if they come up in like uncanny patterns. And threes, when my mom died, were always a big thing. I kept seeing threes, threes, threes everywhere. And I didn't feel like the three was this omen of death, but the three was saying to me that either my angels were with me or that I was really supported. So when I went to go and pick up Charlotte's ashes, I was quite pleased to see on her little card that there were a number of threes and the 333 that I had been seeing for the past 2 or 3 years. And it was like, I don't know. What does it mean? I have no idea. But I took notice, and I feel like it was a really good sign from either my mom, from God, from my angels, just the universe, again, supporting me through this really heavy process. What else did I get from Charlotte? This tiny, tiny feather. It showed up right on the doormat going into my house. And it just made me laugh because, of course, it wasn't some big feather. It was this tiny Charlotte-sized feather. So I put it on where her ashes were, and I've saved it to keep ever since. So with all of our dogs, we feel, I love this poster by Steve Sanderson, Lost Companions, that when we can close our eyes and be in silence, even as we grieve, that we can feel their presence coming and going with us. So that was Charlotte and Ernie and what they really taught me. But their signs continue. So there's a place near me, the Animal Guardian Network, and I'm invited to do pet remembrances as pet blessings. So this was back in 2019, and I went to go and do an honoring and remembering, offering the pet blessing. And actually, wait, I think this was 2016 because it was the year that Charlotte died. So because I was doing the blessing, they went ahead and included Charlotte and Ernie in the candle lighting. So I had everything set up, and of course, what do I have set up there? But I have 33 tennis balls in honor of Ernie, and I have Charlotte's ashes with the feather. I have Ernie's ashes. I have prayer cards and incense and Tibetan bowls and hearts and all things that remind me of this special bond. Okay, so what they do during the ceremony is they put all of the animals' names in a container, and they'll pull them out, and somebody random will go and light the candles for those animals. So I had my camera ready because I wanted to take pictures as soon as they announced Ernie and Charlotte and went to light the candles, because you never know what might happen, right? So I'm taking pictures, and in this picture, I noticed that there's like these circles that are like reflecting, and I'm like, oh, interesting. And then I thought, you know what, that's probably like my gongs behind me reflecting on the sun somehow in front of me, which is totally weird, but not the miracle that I was looking for yet. In the next picture, you can kind of see, it's kind of hard, but you can see how these are now morphing into hearts. So these lights that were circles, big one and a little one, as they're lighting the candle for Ernie and Charlotte, then morphed into these hearts. And that was just like unbelievable, unbelievable. And just another way that they showed up for me and reminded me that they were there with me. Now, one last tennis ball story. This was in 2019. This was a place that I would go. It's a business. It's right off the road. And I would go there to consult, and I would see people one-on-one to do sound healing or meditation or grief or, consultations, that kind of thing. And I'm leaving the building and I look down and I'm like, why is there a tennis ball here? And I see the tennis ball and it's right there. And there's like these interesting colors around it, but it's in a parking lot. I'm like, how on earth, right? So I'm like, I pick it up and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to bring this with me. And so I'm thinking, well, isn't that interesting? And so that day I was meeting a friend of mine who also does work with animals. She's actually an animal groomer, but she also does Reiki and she does other palliative kind of work. And we were heading to a bookstore because we wanted to find a bookstore we were looking for gems. So we go to the gem section, and in the gem section, misfiled in the Barnes and Noble bookstore was a book called Soul Healing of Our Animal Companions. And I'm like, and it's the hidden keys to a deeper human animal connection. I'm like, well, that's weird. Earlier, I just found a tennis ball from Ernie, and now I found this misfiled book on soul healing with our animal companions. Coincidence? I think not, but who knows? I think with all of these kinds of signs, it's more about that we need to be able to recognize them when we just have an open mind and an open heart, right? And that's when we can go, all right. So we just are aware and open, and we're like things that make you go, that kind of thing. So I thought that was interesting. So now with Ernie, and of course Charlotte too, but mostly Ernie, have you ever stopped and realized that if you hadn't met certain dogs, that your life would be totally different? I have. And I know that if I hadn't met them, my life would be totally different. Ernie is the one who's guided me into this end of life care and pet hospice, which I do as consultations, some volunteer work for people pro bono, and it's just a beautiful way to support animals when they have a terminal or debilitating illness. And it's basically hospice for animals. It's hospice. And Samson, my mother's dog, was one dog that I was benefited from this, who he ended up with degenerative myelopathy. And with his degenerative myelopathy, it's terminal. Well, I pulled out the stops and we pulled in all of the alternative healing. We did laser therapy. He had to wear these special glasses to protect his eyes. He did hydrotherapy, and he also had what I called his wheels. So while Samson was navigating his degenerative myelopathy, we did what we could for him to keep him comfortable and happy and moving forward in life. So it was learning about these options that were available to keep my animals comfortable. And I learned that really traveling that path with Ernie. This is also his wheels. Christmas time, we decorated. I bought it. I had a little license plate that hung from the back, and I hung Christmas lights. And we would go through the neighborhood at nighttime, and all the lights would flash on his wheels. And German Shepherds, for those of you who know German Shepherds, they love to be the center of attention. They love to dress up. They love you to fawn all over him. So Samson just was like, what? Yeah, these are my wheels. This is my license plate. Notice me. So he loved it. He was just a fantastic and amazing dog. And with him, we did get a sign from my mother. This angel. Now, my sister and I had been going up and downstairs in the basement doing laundry, cleaning his stuff and doing preparation work because we had to let Samson go by euthanasia. Well, I had to with my two dogs, Ernie and Charlotte. Both of them died at home. Charlotte died on my chest at 2:30 in the morning. In fact, I woke up and I was like, I think she's gone. And she had just silently slipped away into the ethers. But with Samson, he got to a point where the cart was becoming uncomfortable. He just was really not finding much joy. It was difficult to manage him because he weighed 125 pounds, and it was just really time to let him go. And even if you're using a planned euthanasia to say goodbye to your animals, you can make that a very beautiful process and create a ritual around it. And so we were preparing, and we had been up and down the stairs. And I walked to this room, and I looked down, and there was this angel like in the middle of the floor. And my sister and I don't even know how it got there. But when I turned it over to look at the back, it said Sparrow Hospital. And Sparrow Hospital was a hospital that my mother was in right before she was transferred and she died. And I was just like, oh my God. And this dog, Samson, was my mother's dog. So when we got this angel, we were just like over the moon, feeling so blessed and supported, and that my mom was there and she was giving us the nod like, hey girls, it's okay. I'm with you. And you've done the best you could with my boy, because those two were like bonded. So we had an altar, of course, for Samson, and what was in the middle, but a tennis ball of Ernie's, so that we could hopefully call Ernie in so that Ernie could escort Samson across the bridge on this journey. We had rosaries and those two little treats there, things that he loved, and we had prayer cards, and we had one of my favorite ritual palliative hospice care flower essence sprays were there as well. The next animal that the palliative care I assisted was Walter. And Walter was a beautiful cat. And I worked with Walter and his people until Walter ended up passing at the ripe young age of 26. And what I thought was interesting on Walter's memorial, which I did not write, that how many beloved friends did he have? But of course, 33. The threes again. I just thought that was cosmically interesting. It says Walter loved the street, the sun, the grass, and his 33 beloved feral friends. And his memory will live on in the kindness that we, the people who loved him, show to every living being. Walter is all around us. So a friend of mine sent me this. Found it to be very touching. And this really applies to anyone out there who gives all of the love to animals. And that when they've moved beyond those veils of time and space, that they're forever changed by the love that we give them. And they want them to know that they appreciate us always and forever. That connection. I love that. Bark, meow, chirp, urgle. Who says urgle, right? Which animal says urgle? I don't know. We know that what we have once enjoyed, we can never lose. That love is all we love deeply becomes a part of us. And that we know that you will never walk alone, because your loved ones, for me, that's Ernie and Charlotte, my mom, my dad, that they will always, and Samson, Walter, they'll always be with me and always be with you. So with that, I'm going to stop my share. And I wanted to make sure I got through quickly enough so that we had time to share stories and comments or have questions. So if anybody would love to raise their hand and share a story of a special bond that they had with an animal that they want to talk about, or like signs that came to them. There was a woman that joined us at the group, and I don't see her here today, but she joined my group the other day and was sharing a sign that she got from her dog right after. And she was called to take a picture, and her dog showed up as an angel in this beam of light. It was really incredible. But like I said, this is I want to hear from you guys. So, Roseanne, yes, please.
So my story is in 2019, it was the fall, and I was falling asleep, and I felt depression in the bed behind me, and I felt something walking on the bed, and I knew it was immediately. I could feel it was four legs walking, and I could feel it was my dog, or felt like a dog walking, and I thought immediately of my dog Ruby, a beagle that we had to put down in 2011, so it had been a while. I found that very interesting and comforting. And the couple months later in January, I was meditating, and in my meditation, very quickly in my mind's eye, I saw this little miniature schnauzer. And I thought that was really interesting because I never had one or knew one. So after meditation, I told my husband about it, and he said, well, that's interesting, because the day before he had been looking at dogs thinking he might surprise me for my birthday in June. So we thought that was kind of interesting. And I started Googling like miniature schnauzers just because I was curious, noticed a local breeder, and I went to her site. And I was drawn, there was a bunch of little puppies' faces there, and I kept being drawn to this one little face. After about the third time of going to her site and looking at this little face, which was kind of blurry, but there was something there. I realized that this little puppy was available on the exact day that my son had transitioned 2 years before. So, this little puppy, yeah. So this puppy is actually sleeping nearby me right now. It will be 3 years old in November, but he's been the joy and has pretty much been my hero and saved my life.
Roseanne, thank you for sharing that. And I find that I'm getting chills all over right now because I've heard this type of story before, more than once, of other pet owners that have, this dog has come into their life the day, the anniversary of a loved one's passing. It was another friend of mine. It was her son. Yes. Two people with sons. Was it your son?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, oh, my light just went, that is just like awesome. Oh, and yay.
And this little 3-pound puppy walked into our house, sat down, looked around like, yep, I'm back, I'm here, and never made a peep, slept all night, felt very comfortable, just like, and I believe in my heart that Ruby, my dog Ruby, reincarnated, come back to help with our healing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Roseanne. That's
thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you.
Martha.
Hi. I've got actually a few stories, but I'll tell one. I've had cats. I've had lots of cats, and 99.9% of them were Siamese.
Okay.
So I'm very partial to Siamese, and I always love it when Karen's cat walks in front of the camera. But I had one cat. We all have a special animal. Oh God, I'm going to cry. She died about 15 years ago. Hold on a sec. I had a special Siamese cat named Lila. And I could psychically connect with her, the only one. And she lived to be 21. And I also had another cat that I got when she was 3, who was a great big huge Himalayan. So he's Siamese colored, but looks like a Maine Coon cat in size. And that was Buckaroo Banzai. And he lived 18 years. And both of these cats lived longer than any other cats I'd ever had. And they both lived together most of that time, although they never loved each other. But my story is, after they were both had died, and they died about 3 years apart, I remember I had a dream visit from them one time. I didn't get very many signs from them. I always wanted to. I would love to have one jump on my bed or something, but I had this dream visit, and in this dream visit, they were both there. Now, they didn't particularly get along, but in the dream visit, they were both crawling on me, and I was hugging and playing with both of them, and they were totally getting along, and they were on me, and my mother was in the dream just sitting there near me, and I got so excited, and I said, See, Mom, see? You can come back after you die and say hi. I told you it's real. And that was all in the dream visit. So that's all. It was pretty nice.
I love that. And those dream visits are like so real, right? It's
It was
like,
real.
yeah,
It was real.
that's amazing. I mean, it's like, you're like, what is this? Yeah. Oh, that's super cool. And you said you had another story. If it's quick, did you want to share it super quick? And then we'll go on to Gary.
I was just gonna say, I also after my girlfriend died, and I got lots of signs from her, but I was looking at getting another Siamese cat at that time, and every time I tried, it wasn't as easy as it used to be. In the old days, you could go to the pound and get a Siamese cat. Nobody cared, and they'd love to give it a home. And in the last 20 or 30 years, it's gotten so you really almost have to buy one from a breeder, which I never wanted to do. I always like to rescue them. So anyway, I tried not too hard, and I couldn't find one, and I thought, well, I don't really need a cat. And my neighbors would ask me about it, and I said, well, the only way I'm going to get a cat is if I can get a kitten that's only about 4 weeks old, and it has to be Siamese, and it has to just land in my lap. And that's the only way I'm going to get one. So within about 3 months, my neighbors called me up, and they had found this group of kittens that had gotten left under a work truck. The guy drove the truck. They didn't know where they were from, or how to get them back to the mother, who would have been a feral cat. And one of them was Siamese looking, so they brought it over to me. It wasn't even 3 weeks old. I had to feed it with an eyedropper. And I had that cat. She lived 8 years, and on her 8th birthday, she disappeared, and I never saw her again. I don't know what happened. I think something might have got her, like a coyote, but I never could find out. But it was pretty interesting that I think my girlfriend sent her to me, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
My girlfriend who had passed.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Oh, you've got like we have so much support, right? We have so much support across the veil,
Yeah.
and I love the reminders of that are being shared through our animals. That's so cool. Awesome. Thank you, Martha. Gary, talk to us.
Hi, Gretchen. That was beautiful. Brought me to tears, your presentation. Um, I had a dog show up as a stray who was young, probably about a year or so, maybe 2 years old when he showed up. He was a black lab. And so I adopted this dog, and he was the best. I mean, I've had dogs, but this dog was different. And after he passed, he died of a brain tumor. In a reading with our friend Suzanne Wilson, she brought this dog through, explained how he died, and said, I'm going to blow your mind. This dog wasn't a dog. She said, this was an ultra dimensional being that came to be with you. And I believe it because he didn't act like a dog. I'm choked up talking about it. And this has been 4 years. So,
Wow.
at any rate, I've always grieved my animals more than I have people when they passed. I don't know why that is, but the bond is different than it is with people. And so it's always really hard to let go of animals. But this one in particular was a special dog. So I'm camping one time in my RV, and a woman who was camping not far from me said, I woke up early this morning and there was a black lab sitting by your RV.
What?
I know. Yeah. And there are no stray dogs in the campground. So, and one other unusual thing happened. I could not approach anybody's black lab for several months. They would shy away from me, growl at me. I can only assume he was there with me still. And, but just thought I'd share this story. And it was great confirmation coming from Suzanne that this was not a dog. And the fact that he showed up, she said, every time I've seen this, the dog has been just shown up in somebody's life. You didn't go out and acquire the dog somewhere. It came to you. And So anyway, that's my story. And I don't usually get this choked up, but still miss that guy. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Even like, a number of years later, right? Yeah.
oh yeah, 4 years. Yeah.
Time is just irrelevant when it comes to processing like our grief and that kind of thing. I love
I,
that
I,
story though.
I now have a chocolate lab and he's a great dog, but it's not the same relationship. I mean, I have a great relationship with him, but it's not the same. And yeah, so that was I don't think I'd ever had a being come to be with me in that form before. So it was quite unique. And
Super cool. I love that.
yeah,
And the validation from Suzanne and then the campground thing, that blows me away.
yeah, yeah, did me too.
Yeah. Okay,
Sh-
Sherry. Thank you, Gary. Gary to
sure.
Sherry.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. This is a very unique story. I have this clairaudient line, that's what I call it. I have a sound source that was created by Keith Clark, that when I listen to it, I just hear word after word after word. And if I think a question, it will be answered before I finish thinking it, or I might hear the question I'm asking. It's very interesting. I didn't understand it. Wendy explained that that's what clairaudience can allow to happen. But I had one of my favoriteest dogs was Stephen Louise, and he was a small little poodle. And I had him for about 17 years. He had many illnesses by the time, actually, I couldn't let him go. And so at one point, I recorded him breathing. And while asking him, Stephen, what should I do? What do you want? And when I played back the sound, I heard him say, I love you, mother, on one. And on another, gotta go home. Yes, I do. There were a few. So I let Stephen go. And a couple months later, when I was on that line, Stephen would come through and complain that Nellie, who was his partner, who was a year older than him, that Nellie was still living with me and it wasn't fair and I needed to bring him back. And I said I wasn't getting a pup as long as Nellie was alive and aging, but he should just drop it. And I didn't hear about it again for another year, maybe two. And then Nellie aged out. And shortly after Nellie passed, he started coming on again. And he basically gave me instructions. I mean, it also my son, Danny, it wasn't Stephen only. Daniel would say, he trots into the North American station, really pissed off. I've questioned my sanity for many years since this began. Is it me playing games with myself? But there were some things that worked out very well. I was told to go to the breeder where I got Stephen and ask for a small brown female. And she was expecting a litter of browns. And there was a litter and there was one boy and one girl. But she told me towards the end, towards the time, almost by the 8 weeks, that she remembered there was another woman who'd given her a deposit long before me for a brown female. And she really had to give her first choice. And I remember going on the line and saying, what is this nonsense? Who am I? Why? And they'd say to me, Sherry, test less, trust more. And so I just heard that. I didn't know what to think. And then I got back to her and she said, I spoke to the woman. She does want the pup. And I went on the line again and I was upset. And they said, trust more, test less. And then 5 days later, I got a call from her and she said the woman's daughter had just had an emergency C-section. She could not take the pup. If I wanted her, she was mine. And so we just drove to, it was right near Gettysburg. And we went to Maryland, actually, Frederick, Maryland, and we picked up Lily, who was sleeping on the bed. And as some of you know about Lily, because she's the one that sees the orbs that I only get through the camera, Lily's become kind of like a partner in my work. But very interesting also, one other point was that Stephen was a male who was not neutered, and he was so possessive of me that he liked to mark everything I owned. Like if I put my purse on the floor, Stephen would be on it. And I said to Stephen very clearly, through thought, of course, Stephen, I don't want another messer in the house like that. You know, I just don't want to go through it. And what I heard was, he always called me mother. Mother, if you bring me back, she will know. And we picked up an 8-week-old puppy who is completely housebroken. Just knew what to do.
Oh,
No
that's
trick.
crazy.
It's crazy stuff. So when you say that there's, I think what I've learned to EVP is that there's ongoing communication through thought. All of us have that. Like I call it the cosmic internet or the cosmic iCloud, you know, but like the thoughts are there. And that's, Sonia recording for nonverbal people or people in coma. Well, why wouldn't it just be the same for thoughts from spirit? It's just thought. So I think that not only does the love go on, but that we definitely, when you guys get those senses that they're there, or that they gave you a certain thought, they certainly can.
Absolutely. Well, we know consciousness is non-local.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
consciousness and, I'm glad you brought this up, because when we talk about like communicating with our animals, it is a lot of time through pictures and through our heart and through this non-local consciousness. And it's very quick. Animals often will communicate to us in pictures. And so it's very quick and fast, but it can happen because our consciousness is not local, right? So you don't even have to be in the same room. You don't even have to be in the same dimension.
Think about all the times when you think about someone and then 10 seconds later, that person rings your phone. They could be halfway across the world.
Absolutely.
It's because they thought of you, and the part of you that's non-local, your spirit part, it got it. But by the time it gets to our conscious mind, we just write it off as a daydream. We just don't realize. But in fact, I think we're influenced, as Swedenborg said, by both positive and negative. You might call them devils or angels, but that we are influenced. It can come. I think I'm not as good at pictures as some people. Maybe I'm more of a word person, but a lot will come to me, more through word.
Yeah.
So it's there,
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's just always so fascinating to hear, and I love the shifting from Stevie to Lily, and it's just like so cool. Gloria.
Yeah, I've got two quick ones.
Fabulous.
My husband and I were visiting my son in Florida, and he had two Goldens, wonderful dogs. And my husband and my son were in the garage doing something, and I was at the kitchen table, and the dog was on the floor next to me, one of the dogs, and it said to me, "I'm very sick. I'm going to die. There's nothing you can do." Just like you said, like that. You just reminded me. And it shocked me. What just happened? And I looked at the dog. The dog's fine. I pet the dog. The dog's fine. I waited until we left and started home, and I told my husband. And 2 weeks later, the dog was dead, and they never did figure out what it was.
Unbelievable. I don't want to cut into your next story, but it reminded me with Ernie when he went to go get to he had come in from outside, and I looked at him and I said, "You're not feeling well, are you?" He's like, "No." And I said, "Well, let's go figure out what's happening." And interesting. Oh my gosh. So next story.
One Christmas, I went through a blizzard. I drove somewhere in Pennsylvania. We were living in Delaware at the time. And I picked up a Jack Russell puppy. And that puppy was just hell on wheels. I mean, he was so ornery. He'd snap at everybody and run away, wouldn't obey commands. He was just and it was Christmas time, so we named him PJ for peace and joy, but he turned out to be Puppy Juice instead. Anyway, my husband kept saying to me, "Please, please," and excuse my French, he said, "No more little piece of shit dogs. Next time because he was raised on a farm. He said, "Next time let's get a real dog. No more piece of shit dogs." And because this Jack Russell just got on everybody's nerves. So when I moved back to Louisiana, I was working in an office that was situated on an airport. And I would look out my window and I'd see we were co-located with animal control, not saving animals, animal control. And evidently somebody had turned in a dog that had gotten loose, and it was running around on the airport for a year, and nobody could catch it. In our building, the SWAT guys tried to catch it. They couldn't. The NARC guys tried to catch it. They couldn't. The canine guys tried to catch it. They couldn't. Everybody tried to catch this dog. Beautiful, beautiful, looked like a hunting dog, like a large Brittany. And then I would put food and water out. I would even go in on weekends and put food and water out. And this one time I did, and the dog didn't come for the food and water. It was very skittish. And I saw it way out in the field on the airport, and it was down on the ground. Long story short, I was able to capture the dog because it was so sick and weak. It was about 4 years old. I brought it back to health. It had heartworms. We got through that. And I had her for 12 years. During that time, I went to a medium, really nice guy who's local here in Louisiana. And he's giving me a reading, and my husband comes through. And my husband says to him, he's taking credit. The medium says to me, your husband's here, and he's taking credit for bringing you a dog. And he's saying it's a real dog. What does that mean?
Oh, that's funny.
Isn't that great? Isn't that great?
What validation, right?
Yeah, yeah. And all I could do is laugh because he had said, no more little piece of shit dogs. Next time, get a real dog. So this was a real dog. It was a big hunting dog. Not long after that, I went to see my husband's dad, and he lives in Wichita. And he said, I want to show you a picture I found from when my husband was a little boy. And he brings this picture out to show me. I'd never seen it before. And it's a picture of my husband as a little boy with that dog.
Oh, wow.
What?
Yes. It's a picture of that dog.
Unbelievable.
They could have been, I don't know if it was a male or a female in the picture, but mine that I rescued was a female, and you couldn't tell them apart in the picture. It was amazing. Yeah. So during the pandemic, I decided, we're not getting out as much. People aren't coming in. I'm going to get the dog a companion. And I go over to Animal Rescue in Baton Rouge, and I just pick out a cat. Don't pay any attention to anything at all. They give me all the paperwork. I get it home. I didn't look at the paperwork for 2 days. But when I looked at the paperwork, the cat's birth date was my husband's birthday.
Unbelievable. I love this so much. And it's like, this isn't planned, you guys. We did not plan this. You're sharing this story that completely flows with, was it Roseanne was the first speaker? Yeah, Roseanne talking about, and I said, gosh, I hear that story a lot. And bam, here you go. Oh, wow. So
Bickert uses animals.
Yes, they do. Oh my gosh, incredible. Oh my God, Gloria, I'm so happy you raised your hand and shared that, because sometimes it's like, raise my hand. But what an important, validating, beautiful stories you shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary.
Yeah, a couple of other points that came up listening to everyone else. One thing about the dog Cole, the black lab, when he showed up in the reading, he showed up.
I just got that. Okay, I just clicked Cole.
Yeah, Cole. He showed up in Suzanne's chair, and she said, nobody sits in my chair without permission. But he did, and told his story to her. So I wanted to add that to it and explain to her he died of a brain tumor and that there was nothing I could have done. But that aside, I had a stray cat. I managed this camp in the mountains for 2 more weeks. And I had a stray cat that had shown up years ago, sort of a Siamese mix, and lived at the main lodge. Didn't want to be at my house, liked to live at the main lodge, came out to greet me every day, was probably here for 7 or 8 years. One day I'm over there doing something, and the cat is sitting there looking at me and meowing. And I thought, oh my God, this cat is saying goodbye. I just knew it. And in fact, I think I told this story when August Goforth was on, and he said, well, that's kind of how mediumship works too. So the cat was saying goodbye. I thought, wow, that's really intense. The next day, the cat was gone. Never saw it again.
Wow.
So
Say goodbye.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Intense.
So I just thought I'd add that as far as our communication with animals. You know, it's on a subtle level, but it's definitely there if you tune
It is
into it.
definitely for sure there. And I like how you pointed out subtle because it just happens like,
hmm
Hmm.
and as long as
Yep.
we're open to just,
Like a download.
yeah, exactly.
Yep.
It's exactly like that. Yeah. Sherry,
Am I, okay.
you are unmuted.
I'm unmuted. I just
And
remembered.
thanks, Gary, by the way.
What?
I was thanking Gary. I forgot to thank him. So
I just remembered this story and it's absolutely shocking. I'm still shocked at it. Years ago in my other life, in this life, I had a farm, and we raised Russian wolfhounds, which are the Borzois. And I also had a beautiful Siamese cat who would mate with everything in town. So we had constant kitty litters. And our first Borzoi, we got at 8 weeks and raised him just like you should raise a dog. And he was a doll. But we wanted a female to breed to him, and we asked the breeders to hold one for us. And they held a dog for us in Vermont in a pen. She wasn't exposed to humans. She was just left alone. That was Hildy. And we went and picked up Hildy, and we couldn't even get her to come in the house. I mean, it was a very big mistake to keep her, but we thought we'd bring her, we'd love her enough and she'd learn our ways. But Hildy had a lot of the wolf in her, and she would sometimes just run out on our property. We had a lot of acres and just kill would kill a chicken, or she got in a lot of trouble. She would. And one day, Hanana, that was my Siamese, was running because Hildy just didn't know the difference, between a domestic. She wasn't really broken right for a wolfhound, and she killed Hanana, who was my Siamese, and I had a whole litter of her babies, and so about a year or so later, I was at my sister's in the city. She had two of Hanana's babies. And I had come down with two wolfhound puppies, two of Hildy's puppies, because I had people that wanted to purchase them. And they're all playing, and they're in the room together, the little kitties and the two puppies. And in my head, I heard, there's a score to be settled here. And at that moment, the two wolfhound puppies attacked the kittens. Of course, we separated them and we stopped the fight. But it really made me think, A, because I had the thought, but B, because somehow these little kittens somewhere knew that their mother's death had been provoked by the mother of these two wolfhound puppies.
wow.
That's a really weird story, and I've never forgotten it. This must go back about 40
Wow.
years.
Interesting.
But to think there's a score to be settled just popped in my head. And then those wolfhounds took off after those kittens. And it was like, what do these animals really understand and know? And then also that revenge thing kind of blew my mind too. Had to share it.
Definitely food for thought there, Sherry. So thank you for that. Wow. And it takes us to just at the top of the hour. We're like, bam, I stuck to the time so well.